But she had a lot of book things, and it used to be before we gave it to her, she would borrow it now and then for some book presentation or something where she was carrying more book supplies.
Okay. And you said you drove that van as part of your duties at the church.
Yeah,
Did you have some sort of sticker or something that you had affixed to the van?
yeah.
What was that sticker?
It was like this, First Baptist Church, FBC.
And you're pointing to your T-shirt there?
Yeah.
Okay. And it was kind of a sticker that looked like that, circular?
Up in the corner of the parking ticket.
That was your parking pass for the church?
Yeah,
Okay. Do you remember where on the van that you had put that sticker?
on the driver's side in the upper corner.
And does the sticker actually say First Baptist Church?
I think it said FBC.
Okay. And when you gave Dan and Nancy the van, did you take that sticker off or did you leave it?
No, we did not take it off.
Okay. Was there any damage that you remember to the van?
Yeah,
And what was that?
there was a scar on the driver's side. That one day I parked up next to the curb, and there was a garbage truck there, but I had room, and I didn't know until when he was gone, because when he turned a little bit, it left about a 2 or 3 foot scar in the side of the van.
Okay. And you said it was on the driver's side. Was that more towards the front by the driver's door or near the back?
It'd be more towards the middle back.
The middle or the back? Okay. And you're saying a 2 or 3 foot long or tall or what?
Just long, just a little streak, not real wide.
Okay. Did that actually scrape the paint off as well?
Oh, yeah.
Did underneath the paint, did that rust at some point?
Yeah.
And when you gave Dan and Nancy the van, was it still like that or had you had it fixed?
I did not have it fixed.
Okay. Did you ever have discussions with Dan where he discussed the relationship that he had with Nancy?
No,
You never talked about their personal life?
no.
What about with Nancy? Did you ever discuss their personal relationship with Nancy?
No, other than, I think mostly for Karen rather than me. She told about how Dan had changed.
What do you mean by that? She explained how Dan had changed.
Yeah, I'm going to object. This is hearsay.
Sustained.
Sorry, what is it? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm asking you if Nancy had told you about how Dan had changed.
He more likely told Karen. Than
Oh,
told
okay.
me.
I think I missed that part. I apologize. And so, were you aware of the sleeping situation at Dan and Nancy's house, where each of them slept?
Yeah, may I ask a question and aid an objection?
Sure.
Have you been at the Brophy's home in the morning when Dan wakes up?
No,
And have you been at the Brophy's home at night when Dan Brophy goes to bed?
no.
I'm going to make an objection based on personal knowledge.
Well, I don't know what his answer would be, and I don't know whether or not he has personal knowledge. So what I'll do is have the jury step out for just a moment. Sure, that's fine.
The hall.
Yes, but down the hall.
Yes. All right, so we're good.
Back to the chamber.
All the way down. Let me have to go all the way back to the roots.
Okay, everyone can be seated. The objection is lack of personal knowledge, and that may well be the case, but I first want to hear what the state's question is and what the answer would be.
Yeah, so Mr. Brophy, were you aware that Daniel Brophy was actually sleeping in a downstairs?
Okay, so the court is going to hear some legal arguments about a sidebar the prosecution requested. And in the meantime, I'm going to bring in my guest. I have Federal Executive Clemency Attorney Tammy Allison this hour. Thank you, Tammy, for being with me. Great to see you, my friend. I'm anxious to hear your thoughts about this case, what is happening. Of course, the big witness on the stand right now, Jack Brophy. He's the father of the victim in this case. How do you think he's doing so far?
I think he's giving great testimony considering his age and the fact that he has to use headphones. He's answering questions that are being asked of him slowly, meticulously, and he's coming across as someone who has a lot of credibility, given the fact that he is just being casual, especially whenever we heard him testify about what was on the van and how he was talking about it's similar to the logo that was on his shirt. I thought that type of testimony the jury pays attention to because it was just casual, it was natural, and it was very conversational, which then shows that that witness has a lot of credibility.
Right, and I'm reading through some of the notes. We have a producer, of course, inside the courtroom, Tammy, and you're right. The jury's leaning in. They're taking notes about what he's testifying to. Even when he was cracking a couple of jokes, they were laughing along with him is what we're seeing here. So definitely relating to him. And he revealed a lot of interesting facts so far in the case about the relationship between Dan and Nancy, of course, that he loaned them $50,000 and another gift of $2,000, I believe he said. And like you said, gave them the van. That van is so important because from opening statements, Tammy, we know that the authorities were able to track what they say is this van in the area of the crime scene the morning Dan was found murdered. So he's really a key witness to help build the timeline and also point the finger at his ex-daughter-in-law. How contentious do you think that may be inside the courtroom?
I think it's going to get very contentious, because of the fact there's so much at play here. And it's like the jury is leaning in, listening to what's next, what's going to happen, and what testimony is going to be revealed. And I think that what's going to happen is the defense has a great opportunity to cross-examine all of these witnesses to try to raise some doubt, which, as we know, if that very high burden of beyond a reasonable doubt is not met, the prosecution has failed to prove their case. So I think that the contentiousness of the various witnesses is definitely something that the jury is going to be paying attention to.
And I want to garner your thoughts on how the cross may go of this type of a witness. We did see yesterday the mother of the victim, Karen Brophy. She was on the stand and offered testimony. How would you anticipate the cross, if you were in the courtroom, to go of the father today?
I think whenever we're talking about a witness of this age, he's 86 years old. The jury's paying attention to that. The fact that he has to use headphones to listen and hear the questions being asked of him, they're taking that into consideration. So if there's any type of cross-examination where it's almost like beating him down or badgering him, the jury is paying attention to that because they also already are paying attention to how laid back he is, how credible of a witness he is. So cross-examination should treat him gently to elicit the type of testimony that they want to get out of him without making it seem like they're beating up on an old man.
Tammy Allison, great to have you along this evening so much. We're going to take a break because we're going to take you back inside the courtroom. After this, we're going to listen to the legal arguments between the attorneys and the judge and whether or not this prosecution is able to ask the father of the victim more insights about the relationship between his son, the victim Dan, and his wife Nancy. Stay with us here on Court TV. Welcome back. We're going to take you back inside the courtroom in Portland, Oregon, where outside the jury's presence, the attorneys are trying to argue in front of the judge whether or not the witness, the father of the victim, Dan Brophy, can talk more about what he knew about the relationship between his son and the defendant. Let's watch.
Moment. Sure, that's fine.
The hall.
Yes, but down the hall.
Yes, I'll be down. All right, so the jury.
back to the chamber and
All the way down, you have to go all the way back to the roof.
Okay, everyone can be seated. The objection is lack of personal knowledge, and that may well be the case, but I first want to hear what the state's question is and what the answer would be.
Yeah, so Mr. Brophy, were you aware that Daniel Brophy was actually sleeping in a downstairs bedroom?
Yes,
And how did you know that?
just from the debris down there.
Okay, so what do you mean by that?
Oh, lack of order.
Okay, so the room was messy?
That goes with Dan.
Okay, was there an actual bed in that room?
I think it was a Murphy kind of bed or something like that.
So the bed that's like on the wall and then you can fold it down?
I think that's what that room had.
Okay. And was there other personal belongings of Dan's in there that led you to believe that that was the room that he slept in?
Just his debris.
Okay. What about the bedroom that was up in, that's sort of an attic area? Have you ever been up there?
Yeah.
Okay. Was there any indication that Dan was possibly sleeping up in that room?
I had nothing that would indicate that it was so.
Okay. Was there more of Nancy's things up in that room?
I would say tended to be so, but there generally was not much stuff around like there is in a Dan situation.
In the den? Oh, in the Dan situation. I
Yeah.
understand.
Because basically wherever Dan was, it was more debris.
Okay. And what about the bathrooms? Was there a bathroom with a shower up in the attic as well?
Yeah, there's a bathroom and a tub. I mean, a shower and a tub.
And was there also a bathroom with a shower or a tub
There's a shower
downstairs?
downstairs, not a tub.
Okay. Have you been in those bathrooms as well?
Yeah, generally doing some degree of plumbing maintenance.
Okay. Was there any indication that Dan primarily used the bathroom downstairs?
Nothing that would indicate that.
All right, let me just pause the line of questioning for a minute. I'll allow the state to ask these observational questions. To the extent the state wants to ask what Mr. Brophy concluded from that, you can. I'll allow defense to cross-examine on the conclusion as well. But the question should begin with his observations, not whether or not he was aware that he was sleeping downstairs or upstairs.
Okay.
All right, let's bring the jury back.
Yeah.
And Mr. Brophy, you can sit if you want. If you want to stand, it's fine, but you can have a seat.
Doesn't make any difference.
Okay.
We are waiting for the jury to walk back in. They left the courtroom for a few moments so that the judge could hear what the prosecution wanted to ask the father of Dan Brophy about the relationship between his son and the defendant. After hearing the answer, he's now going to only allow him to talk about his observations of Dan and Nancy's relationship, not what he was aware of. Let's listen to more testimony.
So if you want to reword your question, Mr. Overstreet.
Yes, I will. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Brophy, in the downstairs bedroom, did you notice whether or not there was a bed in there?
Yes,
And what kind of bed was that?
it's like a Murphy bed.
Okay, so a bed that folds down from the wall or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you notice anything else about that bedroom that you took note of?
Well, just that there was Dan debris.
Okay, what do you mean by Dan debris?
Dan's debris is scattered everywhere. There's identification of his clothing, his personal stuff.
Okay. You mentioned clothing and personal stuff. Is there anything else of Dan's that you noticed in there that would indicate that he was using that room?
No, I didn't spend much time in there because that, for the most part, didn't need anything done to it, like the bathroom.
You mean fixed?
Yeah,
Okay. But was it messy?
always.
Have you also been in the upstairs bedroom in what's a converted attic?
Yes,
Okay. And did you take any note of anything in that room?
it was a lot more orderly.
Okay. And any indication that Dan was actually using that bedroom?
Nothing that I could tell. I didn't notice any of his clothes or anything in the upper bedroom.
Okay.
See, off of the bedroom, Nancy had a little room that was her writing room or book room or whatever. So indicating she spent more time there than she did downstairs.
And that's sort of a little room, kind of closet area off
Yeah.
of that main bedroom upstairs.
She had a lot of books in there.
In that room that we're talking about downstairs that has these Dan's items in it, was there any indication that that was like an office or some sort, and that's why Dan was using it?
Well, Dan supposedly had an office room upstairs.
Okay.
And I don't know how much time he spent there, but he had a lot of books there also, but it's mostly culinary kind of stuff.
And based on the layout and observations of both of the bedrooms, did you draw any conclusions as to where you believed that Nancy was sleeping and where Dan was sleeping?
There was no reason I had to draw a conclusion.
Okay, fair enough. Did Dan and Nancy ever discuss gun ownership with you?
Discuss what?
Gun ownership?
Oh, never.
Did Dan ever express a desire to own a firearm?
No, not to me.
Not to you, sure. And what about Nancy? Did she ever express a desire to own firearms?
No.
There's been maybe a mention that you own a firearm. Is that true?
If you call a water pistol a firearm, that's about it.
So you do not own a gun?
I do not. I haven't had a gun of any sort for 40 years.
Okay. Do you recall a large family gathering in late 2017 where everyone had gathered and there was discussion about who owned guns, who didn't own guns, and why? Do you remember anything like that?
No.
Do you recall some sort of family gathering where Nancy was walking around and asking family members individually whether they owned firearms?
No.
Did you know Dan and Nancy had a gun?
No.
Did Nancy ever disclose to you after Dan passed that she actually did have a gun?
No.
Did you ever hear Nancy talk about something called a ghost gun?
No.
Did you ever hear Nancy talk about the ability to purchase firearms on the internet?
No.
Did Nancy ever talk to you about the things that she wrote about?
No, she really never did. She may have talked to Karen some at some length about that, but as far as I know, not to me.
Do you recall whether Dan and Nancy ever talked about life insurance with you?
No.
Did you know Nancy sold life insurance?
Well, I know she did something, but I'm not sure at what level. You see, a lot of it, what we thought was dealing with retirement and government things.
Like Medicare and stuff?
Yeah,
Okay.
because she set us up with one, and then at some point wanted to switch us to another one and whatever. And she would set up at some malls or someplace and visit with people who needed to make decisions on health insurance.
Okay. And that.
All right, again, the victim's father, Jack Brophy, on the stand talking about the relationship between his son and the defendant, Nancy Brophy. Some key insights there for the prosecution, and we're going to get you back inside that courtroom after this quick break here on Court TV.
Try it free for 30 days.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Chanley Painter. We are in day 4 of the romance novelist murder trial. That's Nancy Brophy, a former romance novelist, is charged with murdering her husband, Dan Brophy, who worked at the Culinary Institute in Portland, Oregon in 2018 when he was found shot to death. On the stand right now for the prosecution, the victim's father, Jack Brophy, under direct examination. Let's get you back inside the courtroom.
And that sounds like it's more revolving around like Medicare and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I understood. But at one point, she had talked about starting an insurance company with somebody, but that never did fly. So I don't know what happened to that.
Okay. Sounds like Nancy maybe had a lot of business ideas. Are there some others that we haven't talked about?
Well, this was all after she sold her catering business, but she got into redoing furniture at some point because I was able to help her assemble some of the stuff, but we don't know whatever happened to that, if anything come out of it at all.
Okay. Are you aware whether she was able to sell any of her books?
Periodically, Karen would ask about that.
But you didn't talk to Nancy about it?
Did you want to?
My objection is just him repeating things that his wife has said.
Right, now I understand that. I'll allow the question since I haven't heard how it was going to be answered, but go ahead.
And I'm redirecting the question.
All right.
Did you ever talk to Nancy about her book sales?
No.
Okay. Were you under the impression that she was making any money from book sales?
She just would indicate she'd sold some books, but we didn't ever ask how many or how much money she made or anything. We tried to stay out of their lives as much as we can because we don't need parents telling them what to do.
Sure. And I know, sorry, I'm kind of going back to her and insurance. Did she ever try to talk to you and Karen about your need for life insurance?
No.
Okay. Did she talk about her need for life insurance?
No.
And what about did she ever talk to you about the need for Dan to have life insurance?
No. We didn't have any idea what they had.
You talked a little bit about the interactions that you had with Nancy after Dan's death. You said that I think you were helping her kind of get the house ready to sell. Is that right?
Yeah, it was more so the garage because that's where the biggest disaster was.
I see. And do you recall having any, well, let me ask you this. In the days after Dan passed, how quickly was it that she started to kind of wanting to get things moving along?
Very.
What do you mean by that?
Yes, how quickly?
Yeah.
Very quickly.
Within a couple of days or like a couple of weeks?
Less than weeks.
Less than weeks?
Yes.
What about those chickens? Did she get rid of those?
Yeah, she got rid of those quite fast. We was amazed how that could happen so fast without having chickens too.
Took me a second there. Were you helping her in the days and weeks following Dan's death?
It was mostly in the garage
Okay.
and in the basement, but the biggest share was the garage. A couple of the guys from the church we work with us went out there and spent a whole day sort of sorting it out and trying to make sense out of it so that she could have it sellable. And I think she had a truck come and haul most of it away, and it was gone in like a day's time.
Was that something Nancy had asked you to do, was to come over and help clean that stuff up?
No, just felt that it was something that somebody had to do because nobody had any idea what was in there or
I see.
why or what to do with it. So we had to make arbitrary decisions on what we thought was keepable and what was not.
Okay. On June 2nd, 2018, did you go down to the Culinary Institute
Was that the day that Dan was dead?
the day that Dan passed?
Yes, I went down there.
Do you remember about what time that you went down there?
It was in the morning. It was fairly early. You know, at that point, we didn't know what had happened.
Did somebody call you?
No, Karen had suggested I go down. I don't know if somebody had called or I don't remember what happened, but she sort of pushed the button to go down and see what was going on. And I told her, I figure you're not going to find out anything, which I didn't. But I went back home.
When you went down there, you said you couldn't find any information out. Did
No.
Nancy show up while you were there?
No. If she did, I was not aware of it.
You didn't see her that morning? Did you talk to Nancy that day?
I didn't. Karen did.
Okay. When's the first time you talked to Nancy after Dan had passed?
I really don't know.
Okay.
You know, a lot is a blur after we found out it was Dan that had passed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brophy. I don't think I have any other questions.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hello, Mr. Brophy. I'm Lisa Maxfield. I'm one of Nancy Brophy's lawyers. Do you recall Nancy Brophy actually driving to your house on June 2nd, sometime around noon?
I don't even know what June 2nd was.
June 2nd is the day that your son was killed?
Okay. No, can't say as I do.
Is it possible that she came, but you just don't remember it?
I won't say yes or no to either one because I'm not sure.
Okay. Let me just ask you generally, are you aware of whether your son would have been able to cover the mortgage on the Brophy home without the help of Nancy's income?
No idea because we did not talk finances.
You talk about your son's, I'm trying to find your words, your son's debris. Can you tell me what we're talking about in terms of debris?
Well, whatever you want it to mean, it's clothes, tools, whatever.
You just mean stuff, like things he owned?
You know, it's just stuff you don't put away when you come in.
Okay. I say this respectfully, but I want to ask you whether your son was a guy who collected a lot of stuff.
I would say if it had to do with cooking, more likely, or seafood kind of thing, he would take groups down to the beach and study seafood, the wildlife there.
Now, I want to ask you about the garage that you cleaned out. Can you describe that garage? Let me ask you first, whose stuff was in the garage?
Well, I imagine everybody's.
What did it look like?
Too bad you didn't get a picture of it because it's just catastrophe. You'd raise chickens in there, so there was walled off areas or he'd block them out with 2x6s to raise little chickens till he got big enough to go out to the chicken house. So there was chicken food, there was probably straw, no cars, heaven no.
What else was in there?
Anything that fits your imagination.
And you did not see Nancy spend a lot of time in that garage, did you?
No, I don't think anybody, they didn't like to. Okay. I hated to go in there when I'd go to do a job. I'd bring enough tools to do the job because if I'd asked Dan for a tool, he says, I got one, but maybe I better go buy one.
Okay. This garage space was Dan's space primarily.
I would say that to be true.
Okay, and it was filled with things that belonged to Dan, including chickens?
Chicken food, bales of straw, or whatever else you needed.
Okay. You also talked about being in the basement of the Brophy home. Describe the basement for the jury.
Well, that's hard to describe too. He was growing some starter plants for his garden. So there were shelves of plants with fluorescent lights for lighting for it. Then several times we had constructed shelving for their food items down there. And so then there was a lot of that kind of stuff. And that had gotten moved several times. It seemed like when the fire happened, that I think all changed. And then we reassembled some of them. So there was a lot of that kind of stuff. Canning, he was big on canning stuff and teaching canning at the culinary school.
Was the basement filled to the gills?
Oh no, it was a big basement. You had room for more stuff. See, they at one point had all the camping stuff down there, and I think that most of it went up in the fire.
Down in the canning area, you said that there were pressure cookers?
Yeah.
That's the victim's father, Jack Brophy, on the stand under cross-examination. He went to the school that day, the Culinary Institute, when his son was found shot to death. I want to bring in my guest, Federal Executive Clemency Attorney Tammy Allison. Tammy, again, thank you so much for being with me. Let's talk more about this key testimony from the father. He's faring pretty well, like we discussed earlier, but when he's talking about his son and going back to the scene, and it was, it just pulls at your heartstrings. And I refer to these notes from our producer inside the courtroom when he's talking about those chickens, Tammy. His son, Dan, loved the chickens. That was his priority. That's his testimony. And then he just testified that once his son was murdered, his wife, Nancy, gets rid of the chickens before they could even make chicken stew. Just little things like that. That's powerful to a jury who chuckled at that comment, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's what we talked about, the credibility of this witness. This is a star witness here. And the fact that he's able to paint a picture, so to speak, for the jury to humanize the victim in this situation. And the jury is able to see that he has a loving father. They had a great relationship. And, that chicken story and the fact that the defendant got rid of them before they can make the stew. And that was something that this victim was very fond of. I think that, like you said, it pulls at the heartstrings of all of us, but especially the jury, and they're paying attention to that. And I'm curious as to how the defense is going to combat against that.
Yeah, we're watching some of the cross so far. We'll see if any standout moments transpire. But before that, Tammy, we're going to take a break. We're going to get everyone back inside that courtroom in Portland, Oregon after this quick break. More testimony from the victim's father here on Court TV.
Call or visit us online.
Welcome back to Court TV's Gavel to Gavel coverage of the romance novelist murder trial. Let's get you back inside the courtroom because the victim's father, Jack Brophy, is still on the stand. He's now under cross-examination.
He liked to use these great big pressure cookers for his canning.
How many were down there?
Well, there are two two big ones, I think, and there may have been one or two small ones. I'm not sure. He didn't have time for the small ones because it wouldn't handle enough stuff to do what he wanted to do.
We've talked about the basement and we've talked about the garage, and you've talked about Dan's things being in a bedroom that was down on the main level.
Yeah.
That bedroom that was on the main level, at some point was someone living in that bedroom, not Dan?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do you remember Nancy Brophy's niece, a woman by the name of Susan Estrada, coming to live with Dan and Nancy?
Yeah, I think she did live down there.
And she lived in that room, didn't she?
She did. I guess so.
And then at some point, Susan Estrada moved back to Texas, and that room started to fill up with, as you call it, Dan's debris.
Well, it seemed that way.
Okay. Is it fair to say that there were parts of the house that Dan used primarily that would become filled with Dan's debris? And then there were parts of the house that Dan and Nancy shared that typically Nancy Brophy would keep quite clean?
Yeah, like the living room kind of thing.
Okay.
And I think her unspoken job after Dan did a meal was she generally cleaned up, because with Dan cooking at school, then I'm sure the normal pattern was he did the demonstration and whatever and walked away from it. And I think he did pretty much the same thing at home.
So Dan's job was to kind of create this chaos and mayhem, and Ms. Brophy's job was to kind of clean up after he did?
Yeah, I think that'd be a fair assumption.
And would it be a fair assumption that things like the living room or the dining room or even the kitchen, shared spaces, she was careful to clean up, but there were also rooms that Dan used primarily that Nancy just didn't clean up after him?
Well, I think that's true.
And so that room might be the garage, it might be the basement, it might be this spare room that he took over.
Yeah, and I think his office space was also a similar kind of thing.
Okay.
And I think she left that alone.
All right. This bedroom that you've described upstairs where you didn't see Dan's debris everywhere was a bedroom that Nancy Brophy used.
Was it what?
The bedroom upstairs was a bedroom that Nancy Brophy used.
Yeah.
And it was a bedroom that Nancy Brophy kept clean.
Well, yeah, it didn't have the mess that went with Dan.
You talked about the downstairs bathroom, and the downstairs bathroom had a shower?
Yes.
And do you know whether Dan would have showered downstairs as opposed to upstairs?
No idea.
Oh, I'm getting a secret note. Stand by. Did you ever go through the drawers or the closet upstairs to see if Dan's clothing was upstairs?
No.
Okay. And do you know, for instance, where Dan kept his bolo ties?
No.
Do you know where Dan hung his shirts?
I saw some hanging downstairs.
Did you ever go upstairs to see whether there was his and hers clothing mingled within the master closet?
Oh, I think there was lots of it. Dan had a lot of T-shirts, and I think most of it was upstairs. He also had a lot of uniform stuff. And there was a big closet, and it was jammed wall to wall.
So let's talk for just a minute about the van. You have testified about giving Nancy Brophy a van. In fact, you gave that to Dan and Nancy.
We gave it to them.
Okay.
But we knew that Nancy would probably be the primary user.
Okay, so you knew that Nancy would use it.
Yes.
And you knew that because Dan Brophy had a pickup truck that he'd like to drive.
Yes.
Did you know that that van was registered to Dan Brophy and not Nancy Brophy?
No.
We're hearing from inside the courtroom, the jury taking so many notes during the testimony of the victim's father, Jack Brophy, on the stand in Portland, Oregon. We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. We'll have much more for you here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
So visit goodtogo.com.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Chanley Painter. It was a big day of testimony in the romance novelist murder trial. We heard from the victim's father, and he was able to shed light on the relationship between the victim and his wife, who stands accused of his murder. But was it enough to help the state prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt? Well, still with me, federal executive clemency attorney Tammy Allison. Tammy, we have a couple of minutes, and I'd love to get your final thoughts on the prosecution making its case and, of course, the testimony of the victim's father.
The prosecution did an amazing job today, and I think that they really did paint this defendant as someone who is fully capable of committing the murder of her own husband. The testimony of the victim's father, I think the prosecution did a wonderful job eliciting the type of testimony that a jury likes to hear, humanizing the victim, the relationship, some quirks about him. And I really think that the chicken story really stood out, and it's something that the jury is going to take into consideration when they're deliberating.
For sure. What do you think is the strongest piece of evidence, though, Tammy, for the prosecution?
I think the strongest piece of evidence is the testimony that we heard from the victim's father. Funny enough, the fact that the chickens were given away before stew could even be made. And that was something that was one of those things that the victim really enjoyed doing. That was his thing that people knew about. For his own wife to do that, I think the jury is going to look at her sideways.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Thank you so much, Tammy, for being with me this evening. And again, such compelling testimony from the victim, Dan Brophy's father, in the romance novelist murder trial. And please know that you won't miss a moment of this testimony. Tune in to closing arguments at 8 p.m. Eastern tonight. Michael Ayala is in for Vinnie Politan, and we'll have much more of that testimony. And up next, though, someone they knew.